Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and welcome to Fantasy Pros, right here, the home of fantasy experts, where fantasy lives. My guest today, of course, is not even a guest. He is the one, the only Dan Harris. He is my colleague, and we have a great show for you today. We're going to be breaking down the outfield. We're going to give you names of guys post 100 that have very good values. We're going to give you names post 200 in ADP and ECR and all the three-letter words out there that are guys that are sleepers, the ones that are really in deeper leagues. And Dan, I don't know about you feel, but I feel like sleepers basically are a notion that's been, I don't know, destroyed by the internet. Like, they don't exist anymore, but we're still going to try to give some names out there for some folks. That way they know at least where that value lives in some of these deeper leagues because, hey, outfield is not what you used to be. There's so much specialization in baseball, and it's very important that we don't take outfield for granted in 2021.
I feel like people get mad now when you use the term sleeper. I don't know when it became a taboo term, like, ugh, that's so lazy. Nah, man, like there are a lot of people I feel like out there who just, you like more than others, you think are going to far surpass what their ADP is suggesting that they will do. And I love it. And outfield, it's funny this year, Joe, and I've only learned this through doing mock drafts, some with you, some just, on my own on the Draft Wizard, that outfield kind of drives, like there's a long spot in the draft where you're like, oh goodness, I don't like what I'm seeing right now. So talking about the guys that you can get late, especially, that's where my jam is.
Yeah, and look, I got to tell you, we got a fantastic program for you today. We're going to be doing a little mailbag after this if there's time, and I think there will be. Yep. We're also going to do a little What's Trending with Dan, which is backed by popular demand. I know he is so excited about this, and you're going to want to stick around to the end of the show for that, because what we do is we take trending topics and we turn them into fantasy questions. It's a very simple little exercise, and it's a good one, and they keep telling us we should exercise more, so I think this is very important that we do this. But before we get going, I just want to remind everybody, our friends at Pristine Auction have a giveaway. It's still going here. There's not too many days left. I think it's only like 2 days left for it. It's ending on the 28th, so go to www.fantasypros.com/MLB contest, and you get a chance to win a signed Manny Machado jersey that is unbelievable, and it's so easy to win, okay? All you got to do is head to Apple Podcasts or Castbox, leave an honest review, a good one would be nice, but an honest review nonetheless, and take a screenshot, and what you're going to do is you're going to take that screenshot, go fill out this little form on that site I just gave you, and boom, you are entered into the contest for that Manny Machado giveaway, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction. Once again, it is www.fantasypros.com/MLB contest. Manny Machado is the man. You definitely want to make sure that you get in on that contest, because look, it's over on February 28th at midnight. So get going. What are you waiting for? And while you're at it too, and while you're on Fantasy Pros, make sure you can actually go and check out all of our tools over there, which are absolutely amazing, because we've got the Draft Wizard going on right now, and you can combine all your rankings from your favorite analysts from the web. You edit them. You can include all the tiers and player notes. There's so many fantastic tools. You can export the rankings to Excel, use them in our draft simulator, and all the assistant tools that we have, like the draft assistant, over on fantasypros.com. So go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard. That's the URL there. Again, that's fantasypros.com/draftwizard. Start training for your draft, like Dan's saying, because look, this is it. This is draft season. It's like, it's like you get on the treadmill and you keep running, and then you're running for the marathon in a couple weeks. So that's what you want to do. So, Dan.
Hey, boy, by the way, before we get into it, can I get one shameless plug for something that
you can give as many shameless plugs as you like.
So, Joe, you and I are both in TG FBI. We both got the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. You got your draft pick, your number one?
I am. I actually got a number one pick, which would not work out well for football this year. I got a bunch of 1s and 2s, which I never get, and I think we all know how that ended up.
So I'm 9. That's actually my sweet spot. We could talk about that on another show. That's where I like to be, right about there. However, here's the deal. Not this year, because there's no vacation here in the Harris household, but generally speaking, the TGFBI drafts begin when I am on vacation with my family for February, so usually on a beach. One of the things I do every time, because I don't want to have to put in my own rankings into the NFBC. Like, it's manual. You got to do all that.
Sure.
So what I do is I create a cheat sheet using our cheat sheet creator with my own rankings. Okay. I just copy and paste them in. You can do it with my ranking. You can do it with a bunch of people's rankings. And I use them and I connect our draft wizard, which you can do the draft assistant, by the way, connects right to your draft live, so that I am always having something that's suggesting for me, that's looking at my rankings live connected to my draft. It's a really, really cool tool when you both create your own cheat sheet and you connect it to the draft. So again, the Draft Wizard is awesome. Oh, just Draft Wizard. I can't say the Draft Wizard. Draft Wizard is awesome. You guys should really check it out. And the cheat sheet creator. It makes your life so much easier wherever you draft. Sorry, shameless plug.
No, I mean you've heard me plug the Draft Wizard everywhere because I use it to. I love that you can back things out. I love that you can go a couple rounds and say, you know, I don't like this. Let me go backwards and let me try something different. And I think that is so much more useful than going through an entire mock where you had your pick and now it's over. And it really is not teaching you anything. It's not teaching you how to build a roster. And that's what I like about the Wizard is the whole back out feature and then redoing stuff, because then you start to go, okay, I see where the pool's going. I see where things and where the value is as you get like into rounds 8, 9, 10. And that's really where the draft begins. Any moron can draft the first 3 rounds. It's about after that. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
I could screw them up. I could screw up the first 3 rounds, but yeah.
Oh, you can.
It's a lot of good stuff. Go over there. Go over. Nobody beats the Wiz, as Joe and I always say.
Nobody beats the Nobody. I tell you.
Nobody. All right, let's go. Sorry.
All right, let's do it. So here we go. It's we'll do countdown style here. So Dan and I are going to look at outfielders post 100 here, and we're going to give you some names of guys. And look, if you got somebody right around 100, that's fine too. But who are some of the you did? You're a cheater. Yeah, I think we've established this about you already. You're a terrible, awful cheater. Sure. But let's start with your number 5 pick here in terms of undervalued outfielders.
Yeah, so look, bottom line is you took all the outfielders first. You had your whole list before I even got to choose number 1, okay? So yeah, I had to cheat a little bit and I had to go within the top 100, but it is a guy who I like to talk about a little bit because he is somebody who you can't be crazy overvalued, who's going at pick 73 and valued at pick 73 in ECR, and that's Nick Castellanos. I'm about 10 spots higher. So top of your head, Joe, okay? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Put me on the spot.
What was the Reds' team batting average last year? Randomly pick a number. Brandon, I'm not expecting you to come anywhere close.
257.
212, Joe.
Oh my God. You know why? Hold on. That makes sense because Suarez was so bad. Moustakas' BA was low. So that actually makes more sense. I should have gone way lower.
Their BABIP was 245, like one of the lowest. I was looking it up, like 20 points lower than everybody else. It's just there's no reason for it. Like it's not like the pitchers in the Central are that good. I think it was just a bad luck season for the Reds, and I really expect them to to bounce back. Castellanos has played before last season with the shortened season. He's averaged 155 games, okay, in each of the 3 previous seasons. So if you give him 155 games, his pace last year, 36 homers, 96 runs, 88 RBI. And remember, the 96 runs, 88 RBI was on a team that was not getting on base at all and was not having, that sort of thing. So I think it's reasonable to think his counting stats are going to come up. It was really just his batting average, 225. His strikeout rate went up to 28.5%. But his expected batting average was 273. His strikeout rate has always been much lower. He made quality contact all last year. His barrel rate was 16%, top 5% in the league. So I really expect this just to be a monstrous bounce back, for Nick Castellanos. And again, I'm taking him ahead of guys like Randy Arozarena. I don't know how you feel about Arozarena.
You know what? Skeptical. This is why we're soulmates, because on FantasyPros this week, plug, more shameless promotion, we actually had the questions about give me an overrated and underrated pitcher and hitter, and I took Randy Arozarena, and part of my argument was 20 picks later, you can get Nick Castellanos, you can get a bunch of other guys in that same, who I think have, like Michael Conforto, guys who have more of a track record than Arozarena, but everybody's getting hung up on the upside of him as opposed to the downside. And here's a player like Castellanos who is just so steady, and you've given so many good stats on him, and I just cannot justify the chasm between the two. So therefore, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait a little while in outfield. Charlie Blackmon was another guy who I understand he's older, I get that, but he's still in Colorado for now, and I can't put Arozarena ahead of those guys that I know are more proven.
Yeah, I don't want to go in here and bashing Arozarena. Arozarena, if you guys have followed me at all throughout the years, that's the player that Dan Harris does not draft ever. Nobody's on the do not draft list, but he'll never fall far enough for me to actually feel comfortable with him. Guy like Castellanos, we were so excited about him last year after he had the little bit in Cincinnati and what we thought he was going to be able to do. And for the most part, other than the batting average, which was mostly bad luck, he kind of did it. So I'm taking him earlier than most people. He's just like the comfortable, old sweater that you put on. It's not like he's going to wow you. He's not going to steal any bases.
Right.
But he's going to be really, really solid. So I'm taking him about 10 spots higher than both our ECR and ADP.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. All right, let's kick things off with my number 5, and it is Michael Brantley at 119. Another player who hits for a good average, has some pop, is certainly going to hit somewhere in the middle of that Houston order. And as far as I'm concerned, is kind of being forgotten. Everyone's talking about Alvarez and Bregman and the bounce backs. Everyone's talking about Correa and Altuve and what they're going to be this year. And nobody's talking about Michael Brantley. And Michael Brantley is another one of these guys. He doesn't have the same power upside as, say, Castellanos, but he's always been somewhere around a 290 hitter. He's always had a little bit of pop. He doesn't steal as many bases now, and that's just a matter of where you are. But if you're talking about just a solid, just lock him in, solid productivity outfielder, Brantley's it. And I think he's getting grossly undervalued in this market. And I'll tell you, he had a pretty good season last year, and in DFS used him a ton because he was basically underpriced the entire season for some odd reason. And whenever you wanted to do an Astro stack, that was where we would start with Michael Brantley.
Yeah. I have trouble with Brantley, and the reason is because he just doesn't, other than batting average, which he's still a standout, he just doesn't really wow you anywhere.
No.
Like the speed is gone. I mean, the stolen bases are gone.
Sure.
What's his home run upside? I mean, he only hit 5 last year. I know it was a shortened season a little bit, but
but if a 5 gives you 15 and a 162, I'll take the 15 and the 300 batting average at 119. What I'm saying is a guy who is going to play, who is a good, solid foundational player. And look, in points leagues too, keep this in mind.
Sure.
He's a guy that fills the box score. He's the guy that fills those stat sheets, and that is an important thing because Michael Brantley is a player that I think we start to take for granted these kinds of guys over time. Kind of like we did with Shin-Soo Choo for the last couple of years of his career. We just got to take him for granted. And every year he goes out there and he produces, and you're like, I wish I had a guy like Shin-Soo Choo as my fourth outfielder, right? But you don't get that.
Shin-Soo Choo was going and pick 200. Let me
eventually. You're right.
Let me throw out some names for you, Joe. Okay, let me throw out.
Throw them out. Go ahead. Throw.
Let me tell you what. Let me ask whether you're taking Brantley over them. What about Tommy Pham or Brantley?
Well, here's the thing. If I'm looking for batting average, and I'm trying to pull that up, which is really hard to find, and there's not a lot of guys that I can actually hang my hat on batting average. Yeah. Brantley's one of the few guys you can hang your hat on batting average. However, in Roto, I would probably lead towards Tommy Pham, but he is not nearly the lock that everybody else wants to make him out. Go ahead, throw another one at me. I'm not afraid of you.
No, that's your first mistake. Will Myers.
Oh, well, you hit a nerve there with me because Will Myers is one of my dudes always that I always end up drafting, and everyone's like, why do you like Will Myers? And I say, well, because how many guys have the 2020 upside with more potentially? So again, these are Roto category things.
Let's do Roto. Let's do Roto.
No, that's where we're living. That's fine. Yep. Is there another name or is that it? You only got 2.
I have a couple more if you want. Jorge
go
Soler.
ahead. Yeah, we're in Jorge Soler. If I'm behind in power, I would take Soler. If I'm looking at my team and I like my team overall, but let's say I've taken some guys, or let's say I have Pete Alonso already on my team.
Sure.
Then I'm looking for more of a Brantley style guy. I think that's more of a pick and choose.
Last one, Ramon Laureano.
You know what? I'm taking Michael Brantley because I'll tell you what. Although Laureano 2 years ago had a very nice season, and Laureano is actually a player that I've talked about on the show already that I think is undervalued as opposed to last year was a little overvalued. I think with Laureano, there's also that downside where he had the one good year, and we could look back on it 2 years from now and go, boy, we're still chasing that one good year that he had. And maybe he never lives up to that hype. It's possible. I don't want to do too much in terms of like the bad 2020 because it is a small sample. But I'll tell you what, Michael Brantley, it's right there. Michael Brantley is a better offensive player just from his track record, so I will lean on that, especially in this year where there's so much unknown. Let's do your number 4 because it's a big name who's now dropped out of the top 100.
Yeah, it's Chris Bryant. He's 107th. Now, he had 4 games in the outfield last year. He played in the outfield more the year before. I'm assuming he's going to qualify outfield in your league. I'm a little torn on him, Joe, honestly, so I'd really like to hear what you think of him when I'm done. But the last 4 years, 162 game pace of 278, 29 homers, 112 runs, 80 RBI, and 5 steals. Terrible last year. Completely understand. 206, 293, 351 slash line, 4 homers in 34 games, and he had terrible contact rate, 5.5 barrel percent, 31.9% hard hit rate. Gross. All of it gross. But he was injured. Like, he was battling a wrist injury, which saps your power. Remember that Freddie Freeman year where he, said it was like swinging a wet newspaper. That's going to sap your power. He also had back injury. He's only 29 years old. He was on the verge of being a complete superstar, the year before. And I feel like we're taking into account all these the Cubs, there were all this talk about the Cubs dealing him or whatever they want to do. They don't want, Look, for me, Chris Bryant, he's never had great contact in his career, but he still gets it done. So, for me, Dom Smith is going over him. Alec Boehm is going over him. I'll take Bryant. I'll take Bryant over Matt Chapman if we go to third base. Right now, because of his hip, his labrum in his hip, until I see he's healthy, I'm taking Bryant over Matt Chapman. So he's a guy who I've wound up with in a lot of mocks.
I don't think that's a hot take at all. And he's had the shoulder issue. He's had the wrist issue.
Yep.
And I mean, people forget that when he came into the league, how everyone's got the buzz about, the Luis Roberts and the Eloy Jimenez and all these guys over the last couple of years. That's how everybody was about Chris Bryant. It's like, oh, this is the must-have guy for your dynasty league, right? He's a can't-miss superstar. And the first couple of years were really good, and then some injuries set in. And now he's looking at a payday. And here's a little fantasy black book nugget for you that I think you'll enjoy. Because it's a contract year, I would be more apt to go and roll the dice with him. And people will, it's funny because I had an argument with a good friend of ours in the industry who did one piece about, here's a list of, people really don't have great years in contract years or as much as you think. And I said, well, here's the problem with that study as opposed to the one that I did, which is actually, if you look into it, there's too many people every year that are free agents in Major League Baseball. Most of them are fringe players on 1-year deals. So what happens is it pulls that productivity bell down. Yeah. And really, if you go look at the elite level players, they are usually somewhere around a 70% chance of going at or above their normal expectations of what they do in contract years. And that's talking about the players that you would take in the first 4 or 5 rounds of a fantasy baseball draft. The problem is when you look at the study from the bigger group of players where it's like taking every free agent into account, it's no good. And those players aren't as good. That's why they're 1-year deal, spring invite kind of guys, because they're not that good. So of course they didn't have good years, and that's why they're getting 1-year deals. So it kind of muddies the water. But if you're talking about elite level players, and I don't want to say Bryant is elite still, I think Bryant's still very good.
Yeah.
But he has elite in him. I would roll the dice on the contract year with him.
The big thing for me is the guys who go in that range. Why are we and again, it's a third baseman, Alec Boehm, but 4 home runs last year. Where are we suddenly oh my God, we need this guy. Dom Smith. I love Dom Smith. I guess he's going to be the everyday left fielder, but he's also probably going to lose an at bat every single game when they take him out for defensive purposes. Yep. With that, just give me Bryant. That's how I feel.
And I do think there's a good chance he gets dealt if he plays well out of the gate too, which could better his situation somewhere. He could end up somewhere where all of a sudden you look at it and go, maybe it is Chicago's already a good ballpark, but who knows where he could possibly end up and who knows what kind of line of protection. The other thing with Bryant too, it's been tricky is where he hits in the order, which, he loses, ever since he became more of a leadoff style guy or at that top of the order, you lose a lot of the RBI. And then when he stop stealing bases and you lost the RBI, it became a really weird thing. I'd love for Bryant's value to somehow end up more in the 3, 4, 5 area of a lineup because I think it would be better overall for his value now that stolen bases have taken out of the equation. Number 4 for me, this is a dice roll too, but on the opposite end of the spectrum here, we're the younger guy. And Ryan Mountcastle was brilliant last year in a short sample size, but I'm going off the minor league track record of Mountcastle. I'm also looking at Camden Yards. I'm looking at the American League East. I'm looking at the ballparks he's going to hit in, and I'm looking about the playing time he's going to have. And at 145, Ryan Mountcastle, I think, is a good dice roll. Right about 150 is where I want to, or I should say, where I personally feel like you can start to take more chances in your draft. Give me those first, 100 picks should be guys that you feel really solid about. And then when you start to push in the 150s is where you're like, okay, who could be a league winner? Who could really be great? And I obviously there's downside with young kids. There always is. There's always adjustments. But I think if you're drafting him for just the power, I think you're not going to be disappointed. He's not going to live up to the expectations of that short run he had at the end of the season. However, I do believe that there's not going to be a problem for playing time. There's not going to be a problem with the power. And I get those two things. I think at 145, he's a decent investment.
I can't argue with any of that. I looked into Mountcastle. I want a reason to fade him because, again, he's also the type of guy who I like to fade, a guy who just came up, had a good, very brief cameo kind of in the majors, and the next year people seem excited about him. I'm like, no, don't like that. Give me old, boring, steady. But there's very little to poke holes in with him. I mean, he's not going to hit 333 again. Like you said,
no.
He was a 295 minor league hitter.
If he hits 270, I'll dance a jig.
Absolutely, and that'll be fine because he does have the power. I there's very little in that park. There's very little to criticize about him.
That was very He-Man of you, by the way.
What did you say?
He does have the power. It was very
Oh,
He-Man
gosh.
of you.
Even your, I mean, I loved He-Man, but I was
Of course you did.
probably like 4, whatever. But all right, can we do a little player by player? Like, can I ask you?
Yeah,
round
I
castle
love this
first? All right.
game. I love games. I'm a
Now-
sucker for games. I got tons of board games in my house. We play video games in my house all the time. Let's go. Let's play. Let's have some fun.
Mount Castle or Joey Gallo?
Mount Castle. Pff, I've seen
Oh,
enough
not
Joey.
close.
Listen,
Ooh.
I am so sick and tired of the, and I know he's my namesake too. I am so sick and tired of waiting for Joey Gallo. Look, I understand a couple years ago we like 260 and everybody wanted to freak out, right? Because the batting average came up.
Right.
I've seen a lot more Mendoza line Joey Gallo. I know he's got the light tower power. That's not how I like to build a team. I don't like that much swing and miss. Who's the next guy?
Mike Yastrzemski.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man.
Yeah.
Yastrzemski, I think you've seen the peak, right? I feel like last 2 years you've seen the best possible scenario, and I'm always a little skeptical of the guys that kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And that is true to a certain extent, but then you have to look at Whit Merrifield and other players like that it came out of nowhere and sustained. Look at Max Muncy, came out of nowhere, pretty much sustained. Forget last year. Look at the 35 home run seasons before that. But yeah, I think Yastrzemski, if I've already got some risk on my roster, but if I don't, then Mountcastle, because Yastrzemski I think is safer than Mountcastle because I think the floor is a little bit more understandable. I think you feel better about the floor, if that makes sense.
I don't know what to do with Yastrzemski. The mid-career breakout thing is very weird for me to try to get a handle on, right? Like, if he was doing this when he was
it's
younger,
like you. Mid-career,
yes,
all of a sudden,
obviously.
boom, you're
I'm
fantasy
more late,
pros.
I'm more late career breakout, which you should never trust.
I was to say
obviously.
mid. I think you're in your prime now. I think this is
like it.
mid. This is mid, baby.
This is why I agreed to come on this show. But yeah, I agree. All right, let's go one more guy, different position right now.
Okay.
But I'm more using this as a way for you to tell me how to feel about guys who I'm a little torn on. What about Gio Urshela?
You know what? Gio Urshela has a career OPS in the minor leagues of around 700. Mm-hmm. I have never been buying into him. And I know he's been good. I love the wiffle ball ballpark that is the new Yankee Stadium. I think it's a good time. But I'll take Mountcastle because Mountcastle, see, Gio Urshela can't win you a league. But Mountcastle, if he becomes a 32-70 guy, that guy can win you a league. And I think that's the difference maker there. By the way, that's why you came on the show, because you had to, because, I mean, it's obligation. Let's not pretend like you had a choice in this. All right, you're number 3 for the undervalued guys in the 100s. Who you got?
Dylan Carlson. He's 164th. I've got him about 20 spots higher. Joe, what do we say? And really, if we had like a trademark for the show, it would really be fantasy managers hate nothing more than when they get really hyped around a prospect and he disappoints. Then they're just like, ugh, I'm done with this. And that's basically what Carlson was last year, right? He got the ton of buzz coming in. Then he slashed 200, 252. 364, just 3 homers and 119 plate appearances. They put him in there in the playoffs, and he did fine. But he's just 22 years old. His expected stats were better last year. And he's got a 25-15 upside if he plays. And, we talked about Paul Goldschmidt last time I was on, and I know you love Goldschmidt, and bringing in Nolan Arenado helps him. But I agree with you, generally speaking, that adding better hitters filters down throughout the lineup and kind of makes everybody better. And Carlson will probably bat, my guess is behind, at least according to Roster Resource, behind Goldschmidt and Arenado right there. There's going to be RBI opportunities. He'll feel free to steal because those guys won't be coming up behind him. So I think this is a guy, again, you want to talk about a league winner type of guy. He's got plenty of upside. So I love him where he's going at 164.
All right, this is my chance to poke a hole. You ready?
How dare you?
That's right. Let's
ready.
Go. Is there any concern after the long line of mediocre failures, I don't want to say failures, but mediocrity of St. Louis prospect outfielders, whether it be Randall Grichuk, whether it be Steven Piscotty, whether it be Harrison Bader? I mean, we could literally go on for days with the number of those guys. Is Dylan Carlson possibly the next in a long line of disappointments, or is Dylan Carlson the outlier in a good way?
Is he possibly a disappointment? Of course, but
Am I asking myself questions and interviewing? Yes, I am.
By the way, though, I mean, Randall Grichuk and Stephen Piscotty were more than adequate fantasy players for a few year stretch. Like, without a doubt, they were able to do it. Whether what I think of Carlson in dynasty leagues may be different, but he does have more speed, I think, than those guys. And, the fact that Harrison Bader never developed the bat that everybody kind of thought maybe he would, that doesn't, sway me from wanting to take a guy like Dylan Carlson. So I get the hesitancy, and I get the Cardinals' magic seems to run out on these outfielders every now and then. But for me, a guy like Carlson, I don't know, man. I've looked at the profile. I realized it was kind of a late minor league. For him, he's young. But in terms of he really turned it around at the end in the minor leagues, I really like his skill set. I think he can do a lot of damage there. And again, it's not a crazy price that you're paying. 164, that's where you just talked about. 150, that's where you can shoot a little more for the upside. He's supposed to bat fifth in that lineup, man. I'm willing to take the gamble there.
I'm all about the post-hype guys, too. Like, I hated that year a couple years ago when it was Vlad's first year and you had to pay like a third-round pick or whatever it was. And I remember he was going ahead of Josh Donaldson. And I said, and at the time Donaldson was healthy, and I said, how can we do this? How can we take him over Josh Donaldson, who's like literally has an MVP in the league? It's just not smart in redraft. In Dynasty, that's fine. And this is what happens. I feel like people, they take the potential of a player, they get so wrapped up and so excited about it, and then they apply it to the redraft leagues. And I literally last week on PitchCon just hosted, I think, the best possible panel of experts, quote unquote, when it comes to minor league guys. Eric Cross, Ian Kahn, Shelley was on there, all these great people, right? And to every single man and woman on that panel, they said, I asked them this question: how aggressive are you on young players in redraft? And they all went, oh, no. In fact, I fade them. And it is stunning. So listen to these people. These people are the ones you read in your dynasty leagues, and they're telling you in redraft, don't do this, don't overpay. I'm sticking with a theme here right now, which is good players on bad teams. And I'm going to go with another Oriole because this is something that happens, and I love to take advantage of this. The guy who hit 261 2 years in a row, he had 20 home runs in 2019. Last year, he had 11 home runs. He's got some cheap power. I like Anthony Santander. I understand the OBP isn't great, so in OBP leagues, maybe you fade him a little bit. But at 152, once again, this is a player that you could just kind of fill in with. And I feel like because he's on the Orioles, he gets dismissed. But don't do that. That's a stupid thing to do. The Orioles aren't going to get shut out every single game. They play in Camden Yards. He's been a really good DFS player in terms of return on value. I remember on FanDuel, he'd be somewhere around like 3K, 2.9, 3.2. Right. That's a great salary for him. But even in your redraft 5x5s, is he going to be a roto monster? No. But I'm interviewing myself now. Is he going to actually be a player that you could put in your lineup and he's going to have a decent floor and some upside every week? Yes. And I think the only thing that's keeping us now from talking about ourselves in the third person is just small self-restraint right now because we are walking that line. But I love it. I'm enjoying this so much.
This just keeps reminding me of the Seinfeld episode where Carrie Elwes is the boyfriend and he keeps asking himself questions and how annoying that is to everybody. But you're fine. I'm dealing with it. By the way, I say Santander. I don't know what. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it right. That's how I've always said it. But regardless, Santander is a guy who I barely thought about this year, Joe. I realized when I saw his name on your list, I was like, Santander. Let me check where I actually have him because I know I put him in. And I was like, oh, this is a great call. This is a great call. And look, I looked up so on FantasyPros, we do the expert consensus rankings where we take rankings from analysts all over the industry. We have the same thing with projections. It's called Zeal Projections after Todd Zeal. It takes into account tons of projection systems. So his projections for this year, okay, Santander, 261, 28 homers, 87 RBI, 76 runs, and 4 steals. You look at a guy like Eddie Rosario and his Zeal projections, 278, 28 homers, 90 RBI, 79 runs, 6 steals. The batting average a little better, but that's basically the same guy, and it's like 40 picks later. And and even last year, Joe, he hit 261. His expected batting average was 286. So there's more there. I worry a tiny bit that he's getting homer happy because like his fly ball percentage and his launch angle went crazy last year, but he hit a ton of home runs. I mean, 11 in 40 games or however many he played. But yeah, this is a guy that casual fantasy owners probably have no idea who he is, but he's a great pick there. This is a great call.
And I'm from New York, so we say things funny sometimes. So I just like to say, Anthony Santander, how you doing? I say it like this when I say it. But you know what? You're absolutely right, and I think this is where the crossover when you play season long and daily is because you have to find these little gem guys in daily because you need to find value, and you start realizing, well, this guy's really kind of a decent investment every day. Why am I not investing him in the long term in a season long and setting him in a lineup every week? Because it seems like I could get him on the cheap, or if he was on your waiver wire a couple of years ago, he probably lasted there a long time. Don't dismiss decent players. Again, I don't want to say good, great players, whatever, decent players on bad teams. Because like Yastrzemski, look at all the productivity he gave you, right? Look at all the productivity Santander gave you. Whoever you want to say it. The next two guys on your list I absolutely love. Okay. So you don't have to complain that I took everybody. So give me your number two.
Thank you. It's Clint Frazier. He's going 188th or in ECR and ADP around. I have him higher, about 174. So there are two issues, right, when you look at Frazier. Number one, can he repeat his performance? And number two, is he going to get the opportunity to do so at this point? I think the answer to both of those is yes. I mean, his 162 game pace over the last two seasons, 267, 30 bombs, 83 runs, 96 RBI, and 6 steals. He upped his walk rate huge last year, 15.6% of the time. That's top 7% in the league. He just hits the ball hard consistently. Solid minor league track record. The park, as we talked about, that lineup is very good. I just think if he plays, there's very little for me to doubt about his performance. So then the question is, well, is he going to play? I mean, oh my God, Brett Gardner is back. Giancarlo Stanton is healthy. Stanton is not going to play the outfield. I think that's pretty clear. Maybe he'll fill in once or twice during the season is essentially how it's been put out there, but he's going to just basically DH. Brett Gardner was there last year, and the team waited a zillion years to sign him. And Aaron Judge and Aaron Hicks and Giancarlo Stanton are hardly the examples of health, right? Life will find a way for Clint Frazier, even if he's going to be mixed and matched a little bit. So by hook or by crook, he's going to get in there. I have nothing to doubt his performance when he is in there. So I'm scooping him up in a lot of places. And I think you might get even more of a discount now because I think with the Brett Gardner signing, the casual fantasy manager is going to be scared off a little bit.
I'd say in the last year or so, there was a lot of chirping too of, from even Frazier's side of, hey, if I'm not going to play, it's time to move me somewhere where I want to go. And the Yankees didn't move him. And I think the Yankees recognize how valuable he is. And I think that should be an indicator to everybody else out there in fantasy that this is a valuable player that they have designs on really giving a shot this year. And you make a great argument for it. The guy's got incredible power. He's always had some of the quickest wrists and hands in terms of getting to the ball. I remember when I saw him play in college, this guy, or in his youth, he was so quick to the ball. And that was the one thing that I was just like, wow, look how fast those wrists are. And you saw the swing and miss, but putting a guy with quick hands like that in Yankee Stadium, you see the potential there. And look, they've done a really good job, the Yankees, this newer regime of the Yankees, of kind of still being a little bit more, I would say, tied to their system and tied to the players that they've acquired, and have done a very good job of continuously bringing guys in. I mean, this was a player who was drafted by the Indians, memory serves, and they've always done a good job of acquiring talent in trades with other teams, whether it be Torres, whether it be Frazier, and then cultivating them in their own system and then bringing them up. So I think he's probably next in that kind of line. Next for me is a young player that people have given up on far too soon. Last year, he was a player that was going, I would say, somewhere around the 4th round, just generally speaking, because of the power, speed, upside, and oh my God, we've got to get all the shares of Victor Robles. And it did not work out. Spoiler, it was bad last year. It was. He's 24.
Yep.
Can we please not overreact? He's going at 153 now. So you want 100 spots different now on this dude? Bro, I'm going to bro everybody. Bro. Are you kidding me? We can't drop this guy 100 spots. That's insane. He's still just 24. He still has power and speed. He's still a premium prospect guy. At one point was higher than Juan Soto, which is a mistake. We all know that now. It should have always been a mistake, but everybody recognizes it. But that doesn't mean we write him off collectively. He has an opportunity, if he plays well, to move up in the order. He has no pressure on him. They've got more guys now in this lineup, like Josh Bell, like Schwarber, for more protection. So there's a lot less pressure, I think, on Victor Robles. And you know what? I'm just going to buy in, because even if he becomes 80% of the guy we wanted him in the 4th round last year, I even saw him going to 3rd round in some drafts. People were very aggressive on Victor Robles last year. At 153, I'm all in, Dan. So
I think the thing about Robles is, we look at all these guys, we're like, what could they become? What could they do if things aren't? We've seen it. We've seen a 17 homer, 28 steal season when he was a baby. That's
He was
there
just
already.
a boy.
By the way, I'm glad that I'm learning things as we start doing more and more shows together. When you say bro and you drop like a big bro, like you're angry, you're fired up, you are
Bro.
ready to go. If I hear it,
Bro.
so
It's like dude
yeah.
in basketball. Like when they just have that whole conversation with dude. It's one of my favorite moments. I love that.
So the thing with Robles is, look, his quality of contact is poor, and so right now, do I think he's gonna? Do I think he has the upside to be a 25 homer hitter this year? Probably not. I mean, in the future, maybe, but unless he significantly changes what he's able to do, then no, I don't see it. But he's still fast. He's like 80th percentile in sprint speed. He's going to steal. Like, it was a shortened season. He made poor contact. He's a kid. Like, we've seen the 17-28 season before. There's no reason to completely jump off the train. I'm with you. We talked about him, I think, last week when we were on the show. I'm with you. I'm drafting him in most places because he's cheap speed who will also throw in power. So I'm totally with you on this one.
All right, so number one time, very exciting. So who is your number one? Because I just want to spoil it for everybody. If you've seen any of my teams so far this year, he's pretty much on all of them, whether it be the mocks with Dan, whether it be in labor, it doesn't matter, wherever it is, I've pretty much got this guy.
Yeah, we've talked about him before, so admittedly, but I still do think that he's going way too low. It's Andrew Benintendi. He's 218th in ADP right now. But whatever. I have him 192. Every time I update my rankings, which is like once every day, once every 2 days, I just move him up. I move him up a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting in this. You really, you pointed out, Joe, really, this is just such a classic change of scenery guy, right? Like that is exactly what he is. For whatever reason, he was a really, really good player with the Red Sox. Suddenly, he kind of was like, I need to hit more homers. Gotta do it. Gotta start hitting more homers. You know, it's tough in this park. And no, you don't. You don't have to do that. Why are you trying to do that? And that, I think, completely derailed what he did. His swinging strike rate went from 7% to like 11.5% in that year that he was terrible. He could not hit off-speed stuff. That's what it was. It struck me as he was just gearing up for that fastball and ready to pull it and yank it and just hit those home runs. And he just completely fell off the table against off-speed stuff. Get him out of Boston. Get him to Kansas City, where you and I have also talked about. They have kind of a sneaky good lineup in there. Kauffman Stadium is not a great hitter's park, but neither was neither was Fenway for left-handed hitters. So I love this guy. He's still got speed. He's still young. This is a perfect change of scenery guy. I'm now starting to draft him everywhere, unless you and I are in a draft together, in which case you usually snipe him.
Well, it's free square. You know, that's what I keep talking about. Like, give me a free square with a player. Let's say let's just be best case scenario / like, you know, not pie in the sky, but let's say he goes and he hits 15 home runs and steals 12 to 15 bases, and you get him in around 200. That's nuts. That is an incredible roto value, and kind of like Victor Robles, where I'm willing to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe a round more aggressive on that guy. Same deal, because I'm looking for stolen bases. They're harder to find. He has that potential profile. My number one is a player that continuously, for some reason, gets overlooked every year, and it's Ian Happ. Now, he was very good at the end of 2018, and I wrote about this trend of saying this is another big-time prospect that people just are not being patient enough with, and he is still, guess what? Going to be 26 years old this year. He is just a boy, as we said earlier. You need to be more patient, everybody. If you look over the last 2 years, almost the identical stat line, right? So same amount of games, because 2020 was short, and the year before he came up late, and basically 260 hitter who hit a dozen home runs. And if I don't want to extrapolate, because that's always dangerous too, but even if you're just kind of careful with it, you're looking at a player who's got 25 home run potential. You're looking at a player who's going to hit somewhere around 260. And once again, playing time's not going to be an issue. He is going to be part of whatever the new Cubs are. So Ian Happ is another player for me that just, again, undervalued.
I think he's going to lead off this year, and I love him. And really, the big thing with him is he always hit the ball hard, right? We always know that. He just struck out like a crazy amount of time, but he's cut down on that. Like that, he's made the change. And again, he's so young. You feel like you've heard the name Ian Happ forever at this point, but he's still really young. Given how hard he hits the ball, given that he cut down on the striker rate, he's got speed, by the way. That's like an easy probably 10 steals that he can, if he stays healthy for a full season, he's probably going to pop in double-digit steals because he has enough speed to do that. He's basically Will Myers when I think about it. Like we both like Will Myers. He's basically, that's what he is, kind of. And
it's actually a good comp. I never thought about it that way, but now I'll never stop thinking about him that way.
His batting average is not going to, I mean, one of the articles I did was sort of looking at arbitrage, where you can basically say who are guys with similar projections, who you can get 30 or 40 spots later. And Myers and Ian Happ were really the comp. And that's what it is. And There's very little to doubt. He was a heralded prospect, and he's just kind of figured out enough. He's not going to help you in batting average, but power, speed, yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
All right, so those are the guys in the 100s. Now it's time to go to the deeper sleeper guys, right? The guys post 200. So what we're going to do is a little differently now. I'm going to let Dan kind of have the floor, as it were. I'm going to let him go with his top 5 guys, give a little spiel about each one, or maybe there's one in particular or two you really want to highlight, and see what our thoughts are. Maybe there'll be an exchange or two. So Dan, give me your top 5 sleeper outfielders outside of 200.
All right, we'll start with the ones closest to 200, and Jesse Winker's number 1. I mean, basically over the last 2 years for almost a full season, 265, 28 homers, 78 runs. Hits the ball really hard. Yeah, he's going to lead off for the Reds. I think this year batting average isn't going to kill you, and kind of boring. Not a ton of upside for me. But I think he's safe and boring is kind of sometimes what you need at pick 225. So I'm good with him there. Number 4 is Leody Taveras, and this is a guy who, again, when you need cheap speed late, okay, and if you have a Michael Brantley and your batting average is okay, cheap speed is there for you, especially in the outfield, with this guy who is going to lead off for the Rangers, 32 steals in 131 games in the minors in 2019, 8 last year in 33 games, 96 percentile in sprint speed. So look, in the end, if I'm waiting on speed, I'm short on speed. Here's a guy who I can take late to fill it. Another guy like that, Raimel Tapia, who again, people don't seem to buy into. He doesn't have quite the speed that Leody Taveras does, but he's got enough, and he's going to help in batting average. We always talk about it, Joe. It's really hard to address batting average late, and it's not like you can wait and be like, Tapia is going to totally help my batting average. But even if he hits 275, which is probably his floor, that's going to do it for you. He's going to lead off for the Rockies, most likely, and he's going to chip in 15 steals, maybe 10 homers, a guy who's going really, really late at 245, who I like as well. Number 2 is Mark Canha, who's going 250. It wasn't a ton of power last year, but the biggest thing for me was he kept his gains. That kind of led to his breakout 2019 in that his walk rate was massive. 13.5% in 2019. That was the big change. 15.2% last year. There are rumblings that he is going to lead off this year, which should be a boost in runs, or worst case, he'll probably bat second. He's got 20 homer power. Again, everyone just kind of wants to write off 2019 as like, what was this? I don't even know. Like, this was out of character. Last year wasn't all that different. I get, the fact that he didn't hit that many home runs, fine, but a lot of what he did in 2019 looked to carry over to 2020. And my number 1 guy, who's really boring, and he's older, which is fine, because it's David Peralta, who people just don't like him. For his career, Joe, and I know, his 162 game pace over his career, and I realize he's going to be 34. 291 hitter, 20 homers, 78 runs, 81 RBIs, 7 steals. That's his whole career. I know the steals probably aren't really there anymore. His sprint speed is like middle of the road. But he hit 300 last year. And again, he was coming off of shoulder surgery. That's something that really, really hurts you. He says he's healthy right now. He doesn't strike out a ton. I haven't seen that much decline in his numbers. And again, somebody who's not going to hurt you in batting average, who's going to chip in everywhere. David Peralta is a guy who's free in drafts, and I just kind of like to plug him in either as my first bench outfielder or in a deeper league as my 5th outfielder in mixed leagues.
What's funny is that I just took him in a draft, and he went so late, and he is, when we talk about relative position value and how much better a player is than the fantasy league average, David Peralta in my mind is that perfect fantasy league average outfielder, right? Where he's not great at anything necessarily. The batting average is actually pretty good, all things considered. And you're right, it's not a sexy pick. It's not a pick that you make and the room goes, oh yeah, like it's just a guy that you feel good about the floor. I wish he was healthier at times, but at that 258, how could you not jump in? Actually, I know we're going to do mailbag, but we actually have a question about Jesse Winker, so I figured I'd just tie this in. Sure. At Chavez Sports wants to know, can Jesse Winker somewhat replicate his half-season performance from 2020? In the month of August, 28 of 54 games played, he batted .369 with a 1257 OPS, 798 slugging, and 10 home runs. Now, look, Robert, it's not going to happen, that level, right. But that was what was so bizarre is because it looked so good, and we all thought, okay, this is it. We finally have the breakout. And then the stumble came, and I guess that's the question is, are you somewhere in between, or are you more confident that he's closer to the player he was in the beginning of that run?
I think, I mean, I guess it's somewhere in between. I think that Jesse Winker has the potential to be a very, very solid fantasy contributor without being a superstar. Like, I don't think superstardom is going to happen for Winker, But I do think that if he stays healthy and everything goes right, I think he's going to be one of these guys who's going to be a high average, high 20 homer guy with good runs and RBI. I mean, he hits the ball really hard, especially last year. So if he can continue to do that, he's got good sort of plate discipline. I think he's a guy who's going to be sort of a reliable, like, third outfielder for fantasy purposes, but I don't ever think that superstardom, which might have been predicted for him early on, is ever going to really happen there.
All right, it's my turn now. It's Joey P's top 5 outfielders outside the 200. And I'm going to start with a player that I've been drafting in these spots in Roto Leagues for some cheap stolen bases late. And I think he's still got 20 in him, and it's Lorenzo Cain. It's going to hit the top of the Brewers order, which I think is going to be pretty decent as long as Yelich bounces back to somewhat being Christian Yelich. Yeah, the power's limited. You're looking at 10 home runs or something like that. But if he hits 275, scores 90 runs, and gives me 20 steals, I will take that at 204 every day of the week in Roto formats. Brandon Nimmo at 234. Oh, he's becoming like the mascot of the show, I feel like. I love him so much. The OBP's at 400. He's going to lead off. He's going to score a ton of runs. He's actually got some pop. He was not healthy before. He was healthy again last year, and he showed you again why you were so excited about him. They did not go out there and acquire George Springer. They did not go out there and acquire somebody else. The job is his, boys and girls. Is he going to lose in playing time to Malik Smith or Jonathan Villar in center field? No, it would take an injury, in my opinion, for that to happen. So for me, Brandon Nimmo, I think at 234, whether it be in a points league or Roto, and especially in OBP leagues, you need to bump him up in OBP leagues because this dude is a stud in that category. So if you're playing OBP instead of batting average, I would really look for that change. Hunter Dozier at 245 for the Royals. Now, I understand last year was a disappointment, but look, it was a disappointment for all of us. So let's not get too crazy and exaggerate it. Hunter Dozier qualifies at some multiple positions. Hunter Dozier does have some upside. Yes, he is probably not as good as what you saw a couple years ago, but is there a little room for bounce back with, as Dan was alluding to, a little bit of improvement in that Royals lineup? And I think the answer is yes to that. I'm going to be a little bit, and I know this is kind of silly to call him a sleeper, but Jared Kelenic at 260. With Kelenic, here's my take. We always talk about not being too aggressive on the young guys in redraft, but I do believe this player is very polished. From what I've seen of him in the minor leagues, when you start to, really look at these players, I think he fits of a guy who is going to probably hit the ground running. He might not be superstar right away, but it's time for Seattle to really start turning the page and start showing this fan base that they're committed. And right now at 260, that makes a good investment. If he does get in that, let's say they sign him to a long-term extension or something like that before the season, and he starts day one like all those White Sox guys, you're going to see this ADP skyrocket. So if you're drafting early, take advantage of the 260. Otherwise, you can, kind of gauge your tolerance level here. But I think Kelenic is one of these players that I think has enormous upside, but I think the floor in year one is good enough for the same kind of value and return on your investment. And number one is a player that I drafted everywhere last year, and he got hit in the face in spring training, and it was terrible. And I just want to give him a pass. But my goodness, Willie Calhoun, look at the stock drop on him, 323. Yeah. What are you kidding me? Like, how can we possibly get to this? Has it come to this, boys and girls? 323 for Willie Calhoun? He has power. He has opportunity. He's not a perfect player, but I think when you're just looking in the late 200s or those deeper leagues, you're taking a shot on a player who has a good return potentially. I think Calhoun's one of those guys. So those are my top 5. Cain, Nimmo, Dozier, Kelenic, and Calhoun. Any thoughts on these guys, Dan?
Yeah, I find myself drafting certainly Cain and Nimmo to a lesser extent, just because Nimmo, Cain offers the speed, probably the batting average. Nimmo in points leagues for sure. I don't usually go with him in Roto just because he doesn't excel anywhere. Dozier, completely with you. I think it's a bounce back coming. Last year was really the outlier in terms of his quality of contact. The good thing with Kelenic, which I think, is that all of this stuff with Kevin Mather and his comments, I think that actually pushes the timetable up for Kelenic, right? Because at that point they're going to be like, oh God, we got to do something to get away from this to make it seem. So I think that actually boosts his stock for fantasy because I think that's going to push them to bring him up earlier. Calhoun, I was right there with. He's free. You got 323. Ridiculous. So you got to take him. He was really, I loved him in 2019. He had a lot of stuff going on, not only the fractured jaw, but Evan Grant, one of the beat writers, wrote an article about him, how, the social justice, everything that was going on last year. His father is, a police officer, and he had a very difficult time sort of with that and kind of getting his head in the game. He admitted that. I think there's a big bounce back coming. I love scooping him up really late in every draft. So that's my favorite one that you've talked about.
Before we get to what's trending, which is going to be super fun, I guarantee you, let's do some more mailbag questions here. Chaboy888 wants to know, can we trust Kyle Tucker as a top 10 outfielder, Dan Harris?
What up, Chaboy?
What up, Chaboy? It's Chaboy.
It's Chaboy. All right, Chaboy. Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, he's eighth for me. Look, I can analyze it all day long, but Tucker was an elite prospect with power and speed. Finally got the chance to show it last year. He did show it last year. There is nothing I really want to poke holes in his profile. Trust him completely as a top 10 outfielder.
RFL Red Zone, Mike Valverde, my boy, wants to know, should I draft Mike Yastrzemski as a starter? And I'll start with this one because I think the answer is, yeah. I mean, yeah, in a 5 active outfielder league, 100% yes. With 4 active outfielders, yes. 3, I think you might be able to do better, but here's the thing, like if you have a great infield and you attack and you build from the inside out, as I like to do in those shorter outfield leagues, you're going to have to take a shot on your third outfielder, and it's going to have to be a guy like this. So, yeah, I think the answer across the board is yeah, and it's not like he's not Carl Yastrzemski, okay? So we're not going to confuse the two ever, but I think the answer is just yes, right, Dan?
Yeah, it's yes. It's something I'm not all that excited about to do, but yes, you can. There's enough in his profile to suggest that'll be starting caliber, especially as you mentioned. I have him as my 47th outfielder, if that makes you feel better. And again, there are some guys with crossover eligibility. That's a guy who you're starting in most leagues. So yeah, you can do it. I don't feel great about it, but you can do it.
All right, last one here. James F. at PD Dad 623. His question is, in a Roto 5x5 12-teamer, who would you rather draft, Christian Yelich or Bryce Harper? That is, I think, a great question because Harper, I've been a Bryce Harper mark for some time, and it's because he reminds me of George Brett, and I'm dating myself, but George Brett to me was like the epitome of ball player. Like, you probably loved him if he was your guy, and you probably hated him if he was playing against you. You just hated him, I'm sure. But George Brett was like sliding in your face,
right?
You know, good looking guy, get the thing of all this stuff. And Bryce Harper is this like hyper aggressive, fun player to watch. And I understand that people put this stuff on Bryce Harper that, you know, he should have been Mickey Mantle or should have been the greatest player to ever live or whatever. And you know what? He's still pretty good. He's still got a lot of baseball left. I was so skeptical the first year Christian Yelich broke out, where he had those 22 home runs in the final 2 months of the season, and that to me was a big giant red flag. So I backed off. And then in 2019, he did it again, and he screwed me, and he made a fool of me, and I said, okay, I'm buying in. And then as soon as I bought in, boom, he had the injury, and last year was a complete debacle. I am telling you right now, I feel safer about Harper, and I get it. I understand why people are going to disagree with me, but Harper's also a player that complained a little bit about not being 100% last year. So if he is indeed as healthy as he says, I just feel better about Harper as an investment. And look, it's just because I never saw Yelich being an MVP. Dan, how do you delineate between these two?
Are you drafting Harper ahead of Yelich in leagues right now?
Let me put it to you this way.
With the value, because Harper's probably going, 6 spots later?
Well, I mean, it's saying, would you rather draft? So like Yelich is going ahead of him.
Yes.
But I'll put it to you this way. In an auction, which is where, of course, I always want to live, I would rather save a couple bucks and go with Harper. I think that's a perfect pivot.
Okay.
I understand taking Yelich. I just hate the idea of what I saw last year was so bad. And then the 2 years that I had a hard time buying into because everything had just exploded and was so good. The answer is probably you still take Yelich just because of what he gives in 5x5. But I could tell you this right now, if this is a points league and you're asking me this question, I'll take the known entity and Harper. So again, this is what I like about when we talk fantasy, because it's not just the wide brush. You have to get more specific with these conversations because, you know, it's so, you can't be vanilla. You can't say, oh, I like this guy better than that guy. Well, what does that mean? You got to be more specific. So Dan, give me your specifics and how you evaluate these two.
I love both of them this year, so I'll just put that out there this year. And I think in a 12-team league, you've got a good shot at being able to draft both of them if you're drafting towards the back end of the first round, which I absolutely love. I love Yelich this year. I told you, Joe, that I'm ninth in TGFBI. That was where I wanted to live because I have a top 9, Yelich being my ninth. I'm throwing out last year completely. I've completely bought in to what we saw because, again, Yelich just didn't swing last year. I don't know what it was. I have no idea what it was. He just didn't swing. So, like, he struck out all the time and he walked all the time, and that was kind of all we saw. I'm buying into what we saw as a player who developed and reached Milwaukee in a place that was much more suitable to hit home runs and really just kind of took out, and I'm throwing out last year. Harper is fantastic, okay? And I agree with you that I think fantasy managers have a little bias against him because, again, the 2015, where he won the MVP, and he was like, oh boy, here it is. Finally, we've been waiting for Mickey Mantle. And then he just kind of went back to being the really, really good player, but not crazy superstar player. I think fantasy managers put that against him, but he's right there. He's awesome. It's just something he's going to be 5 categories. I mean, maybe the batting average isn't going to fully help you. I think realistically, I think Yelich, the difference for me is I think Yelich is going to offer a few more steals, and I think Yelich is going to hit for a higher batting average. I mean, he basically hit 327 from 2018 to 2019. I think he's much closer to that than the 202 that he saw, and I think Harper is going to stick in the 265-ish range. So for me, that's a differentiation. If you can get him at a discount, I'm fine. In points leagues, you bring up a great point. I mean, Harper, is going to walk 20% of the time, whatever.
Right.
I love him there. So I'm really okay to take both of them way up there. But it's really 1A and 1B, but I would probably prefer Yelich, and I'd probably just pay the extra couple of bucks in an auction or a salary cap draft or whatever you call it for Yelich at that point.
Now, if you've got questions, again, that's why you follow us on Twitter at FantasyPros, and make sure you also subscribe to our YouTube channel for MLB, FantasyPros MLB, because Dan and I are going to be on there every day talking baseball in season, 5 days a week, baby. It's going to be the best 25 minutes of your day, I'm telling you right now. So subscribe now, get in there early, where the cool kids are all hanging out with me and Dan Harris. So now it comes to the end of the show where we like to play a little game, and today's game is What's Trending, and the pensiveness and pain in Dan's face makes it all worth it, and we haven't even started yet. I am so excited to do this. So let's start with trending topics that we're going to turn into fantasy-related questions. We're just going to say something and turn it into a question. What are you worried about? I'm going to take good care of you. Come on, let's go.
I mean, trending. I'm not a trending human, so I don't really get it. But,
well, that's fine. Oh, but tags is? I mean, come on.
That's true. If that's the bar, I'm way above
the bar is low. All right, so Lionel Richie is dating a woman who is 31 years old, and he is 71. That is a 40-year age difference.
Yikes.
I am happy that they are happy, but everybody's talking about it, and some people want to take shots and other things. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you somebody that's fading older players in 2021?
No way. I mean, Nelly Cruz all day long. Cruz all day long. No, I buy into them less than I used to because of the steroid stuff, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever I was playing. Maybe I was a little more willing, but at this point, no, age is just a number. And Nelly Cruz is on all my teams, and I'm happy to keep buying into anybody who is still producing regardless of their age.
All right, very good. See, that was easy.
That was fine. I could take that one.
And I agree. I agree with you on that. I think that specifically some of the pitchers, the Grenkes, the Charlie Mortons, the guys who have higher thresholds of innings, coming off of last year where there was no inning stamina built, I'd much rather take my shot on guys who have done it before and understand what it takes to go 30 starts. Whether they get there or not, that's fine. But some of these other guys that made 10 starts last year and we're just expecting everything's going to be fine, it could be a very ugly second half for some of them. All right. Great. After months and months, PS5s are back in stock. Which is great because everybody wanted the PS5s. You could get the PS5s, but now obviously they're starting to come back around just in time here for MLB The Show playing and everything else. So which Major League Baseball player has the best, I would say, video game skill level to you, where you're like, that guy's like a video game when you watch him play? For me, it's Fernando Tatis Jr. Yes. He's got the bat flipping, the hair, the whole thing. Yes. He looks like a player you created in one of those game things. And you're like, I want to give him cool, like the only thing he doesn't have is gold teeth. Like, I just want to give him all kinds of cool stuff. And he's got all this swag and he's fun and he's got like 100 speed and he's got like 100 power. He just moved everything up. That's what it feels like for me in Tatis.
That's the winner. By the way, video games for me, it's like baseball games are like RBI baseball from Nintendo. Like, that's my jam, where everybody's fat and they all look exactly the same. So for me, video game stuff is like, I don't know, but Tatis was the guy that came to mind. I also think of guys with like the giant power, because whenever I've played anything with my son, it's like the ones that hit it out of the stadium and out of the city So a guy like Aaron Judge. And I'm also a sucker for the flashy defensive plays in all the video games and everything like that. So give me a little Matt Chapman over there at third base, making some plays, making my son get mad. But Tatis is the right answer. I mean, there's one answer. It's Tatis.
I'm more of a baseball stars guy than an RBI baseball.
Okay.
But still good. Still very good. Fair. Okay. Next one here. Aaron Judge showed up to camp, and he's got new teeth. He looks great. I don't know if you've seen these pictures, but
I haven't.
Oh yeah, he's fixed the whole the whole front of the grill. Looks cool. Looks good. Yeah. Hey man, it's like you got money. You go take care of some business. You feel good about you. We are a show about positivity here. So I'll ask you, who, in your opinion, is the best gap hitter in baseball?
Oh boy.
See what I did there? See?
I got it. I like it. I like the timing. Well done.
See what I did?
That's why you're the host.
It's a little dad joke for you.
So I always think, when I think of gap hitters, I'm always reminded, by the way, of like Jose. We're both Mets fans, of Jose Reyes, when he would hit one in the gap and rounding first, and then he would, like, the Jets would come on, and that round from first to second was always my favorite thing to watch. So I always think of like a really, super fast guy. So Byron Buxton or Adalberto Mondesi, those guys. And mainly when I think of gap hitters, I think of guys with not like the crazy power, but the guys who you love to try to stretch things into a triple. So that's my answer there. What about you?
I think Craig Biggio was the best one I saw. Like, he had 50 doubles every year.
Yeah.
So like if I'm going all time, it's probably Biggio. But gap hitter to me right now, like Whit Merrifield. That guy who's just driving the ball in the gaps, gonna get tons of doubles, gonna get some triples in there too.
Yep.
I like the Whit Merrifield as the gap hitter. All right, last one here. I always like to save the best for last. So Hasbro has made a change here with the Potato Head. So we're going away from Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. Is just now Potato Head. So it's gonna come with all the accessories. Okay. You can figure out whatever you want to make Mr. or Mrs. Potato Head. Doesn't matter. You want to make them both. You could do that now because we live in a brave new world. And it's great. Like, you would go over to your friend's house. I would go to my cousin's house, and I wanted to make a Mr. Potato Head, but I couldn't because it was just the Mrs. stuff. Everything should come with all this stuff so you can play and have fun. So, that being said, with the versatility of the Potato Head, how much do you equate, and look at you, you're so concerned about what I'm going to ask.
I have no idea where we're going with this, so I'm ready.
I literally just wrote potato in the show sheet. So that being said, with the versatility of the Potato Head being something that's trending right now, how much does Dan Harris concern himself with position eligibility and versatility on his rosters when he's creating fantasy baseball teams?
So to be clear, this question doesn't have anything to do with potatoes at all, like actual potatoes.
Well, we can ask. Well, do you have a favorite potato?
No, I really have no interest in discussing potatoes.
I do like sweet potatoes, especially like the sweet potato pie. I do like. I just like potatoes. Potato skins.
Potato fries are always where I like.
Sweet potato fries are good.
It's a really low level way to like up your dinner when you go out. You know what I mean? And that's
important question. Oh wait, no, important question. Tots or waffle fries?
Oh boy, I like waffle fries. Is that okay?
You can't be wrong. It's your opinion.
Well, you can be wrong in your opinion. If you've been on a show with Tags, if he doesn't like your opinion, he just jumps right down your throat. So.
Well, I like tots, but I'm not going to pass on the waffle fries. Yeah, but it's important to know these things.
I'll take any potatoes. It's true. When you and I, eventually, grab a meal together out in Jersey, then
I'll order for you, and I'll invite Anthony Santander. He'll come over. Hey, Anthony, you want to go get a drink with us? We'll be great. We'll get some tots. We'll get some drinks. We'll get some beers. We'll hang out. It'll be beautiful. But anyway, position
flexibility. Yes, I got it. Okay, so
no more potatoes.
And potatoes. I wouldn't say that I focus on it like exclusively or anything like that, but I do think that it is an underrated component of a lineup. And I think back, Joe, to your labor draft, which I kind of followed along with, which was great. And I know you guys had a lot of guys that you could move around depending on it. Just opens up a lot of possibilities for you late in your draft. So it's not something that I focus on and I make sure that I absolutely have it. But if it's there, I bump guys up a little bit on my draft board who have multi-position flexibility.
All right, there you have it. So Dan, I want you to plug all the tools that we've got because you are the EIC. That's what we're gonna call you now.
That's right.
The EIC of FP. That's good. Right. I like that. We need a little tagline for you. So once again, we got the Draft Wizard, but again, tell everybody about the tools here at Pros.
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, it really is. First of all, again, fantasypros.com/draftwizard. You practice as many mock drafts as you want, okay? And you can do them in 10 minutes. And it's great. As Joe said, you can back out a pick if you want to see the way things go differently. But, You draft against artificial bots using the expert consensus rankings. It's fantastic. It's different every time. And again, you can do the sync where you actually sync the draft assistant to your draft in real time. So it follows along with you and it makes real-time suggestions. It is invaluable, and you should create a cheat sheet creator where you can put in your rankings that you find on the web. You can pick experts from our expert consensus rankings, and you could use those in a mock draft or in the draft assistant while you're doing your draft. It's incredible, guys. I'm telling you, fantasypros.com/draftwizard. It's awesome. Check it out. Do 1,000 mock drafts. You'll get better. Absolutely. That's it. My plug is done.
And while you're there, make sure you fantasypros.com. You visit there /MLB giveaway. You only got a couple days left now, literal like hours left to get in on this Manny Machado thing, thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. So go do that again as well. You can follow him on Twitter at DanHarris80. You can follow me at JoePizapia17. And reminding everybody out there, go subscribe to the MLB Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, where you can see Dan and myself talking baseball 5 days a week. A little DFS, a little season long, a little this, a little that, a little discussion about potatoes. Who knows where things might go, but I can guarantee you it's going to be great. Okay, with a capital G. So that'll do it for Dan and myself, but the story of the game goes on. For Dan Harris, I'm Joe Pisapia. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.